Well, hello there, and welcome once again to my little arty corner of YouTube. It's Wednesday, the 19th of January, and it's 2022. And can you believe we're nearly 2/3 of the way through the first month? That means we're getting close to 1/12 of the way through the year. And yeah, cor blimey. And it's a damp, grey day here, but there seems to be signs of the sun trying to break through. I live in South Wales, not too far from the capital city of Cardiff, just a few miles up the road, and in a very hilly valley area. In part of the valleys of South Wales, there's a whole pile of valleys that run along the bottom edge of Wales, and in the southeast, and once a very big coal mining area, now not so. Don't think there's a mine at all in the eastern valleys that works. And when I moved here with the family, when I was still very young, in 1969, there were so many. Wherever you went, there seemed to be a mine. So it's changed an awful lot. But that's true of the whole world in many ways. Changes we see over our lifetime. So I'd like to say thank you to everybody who has subscribed, who has liked my videos, who has shared them, who has left me such lovely comments. I appreciate each and every one of you so much. It makes me feel that I'm not talking to myself so much. And I'm not when people listen. And in some way, it's not just talking verbally, it's talking visually as well through art. So thank you ever so much. And please, please, please don't forget to like this video. Even if you don't watch it all the way through, if you like what you see, even a small amount of it, give me a little thumbs up. It helps with Facebook sharing it further and wider, which is, nice. What amazes me is how many people leave comments about how interesting they find this, how it helps them draw or gives them inspiration and ideas. And that's the teacher in me, because before I became known for colouring books and art and so on, I was a science teacher for many, many years, mainly to children with special needs. That doesn't mean I'm casting aspersions on any of you, but to inspire and to get people to engage in learning, to give things a go and to believe that they can do this. Not in my way, but in your own way. But it does start by copying and learning from others and then developing. So thank you so much. So no further ado, I'm going to get on to today's fragment of your imagination challenge fragment. And I'll say this again because I never know how many people are new here. A fragment is in Zentangle speak, is the basic unit of a repeating pattern. It's like a cell in an organism, I suppose, or the repeating tile in a tessellation. So instead of using the word tile or cell or tessera, they use the term fragments. And the theory then is that you can use something they call a reticulum, which is a grid, to repeat this pattern, this fragment. And you can use it exactly the same way in each section of the grid. You can rotate it, you can mirror it, you can use a combination of these to build a pattern up. So you start with one little thing and then you allow it to just become what it is. Now, I've decided, as I did with the Inktober Tangle pattern challenge, that I was going to look at each fragment or each pattern a day and see how I could vary that basic pattern, see how I could change it, what I could do with it. And fragments have proven very interesting. And there are times when I look at fragments and I go, what am I going to do with this? And the only way to work that out is to work with it. Because I've learned this now from experience, is that sometimes the ones where I think, oh, what on earth can I do with this, lead to some of the most interesting variations. And as I say, what's the worst that can happen? I end up with something that's particularly grim and horrible, And all I've done is wasted a couple of minutes of my time, a little bit of ink and a little space on my paper. And this is sketchbook stuff, so it doesn't have to be perfect. It's about getting ideas down. It's about recording those ideas and keeping them as a reference for future ideas, future projects. The other thing is that sometimes the ones that work out wrong in the first instance, you take a break from it, walk away and come back to it. What I've found is that sometimes I find that little gem hidden in there that leads to something else, or something that I can learn from it that I can apply perhaps to the next fragment. So that's quite interesting. So this pattern, this fragment's an interesting one. I have drawn it here once, but I'm going to go through it again because I think it's a useful one to think about how you construct it. And my first instinct is to start from the centre and work outwards. So I've put a dot more or less in, equidistant from each of the corners. And there I'm going to, excuse me, oh dear. I'm going to draw a little line perpendicular to each of the sides. So we're not having it pointing up to the top, we're having it this way. And then I'm just going to draw little curves inside that little shape there, just to give it a bit more volume. Next thing is to take these and pop a little upside down V and fill it in with black, and to do the same for the others. So we're following along that line and having the point of that pointing there. And the final step is to pop some of these in the corners. Now this makes 7 triangles, I'm told. So I'm not going to try, because if I start putting lines in, this is going to look a mess. But it's an interesting idea because it's using the idea of how our eyes split space up or imagine lines to be there. There's some interesting shapes. We've come across these kinds, or say we, if you've not watched any of my previous videos, you won't know. But there are petal shapes that are sort of formed here, which are familiar. And being able to split this in ways like 3s there we've done, and 3s there have been done. So I'm going to try and work with this kind of pattern. And it's going to be challenging, because I really can't think of much I can do, but I do know of one thing I want to do. And that is, as I was drawing this, I really rather liked just these. I liked it without the spikes in the corner. I just find this a much more pleasing arrangement. So that's my first variation, and it's most probably the one I'm going to work with the most. So let's see what else we can do. So get that bit in the centre, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to make it really quite big, like so, and then these triangles I'm going to make quite short but quite wide. It's a bit of a variation. So that's a different variation. There's a lot less space between these individual elements, and it tricks your eye into seeing these shapes more clearly. Our brains are very good at pattern matching and filling in gaps. There's lots of optical illusions. I don't know if you've ever seen any of them that do the rounds on Facebook and other social media, where you're asked how many, you've got, what is it, circles arranged in, a triangular grid, and you've got little nicks out of the circles. So you'd have one like this, and perhaps another one here like this, and then another one which is going to go under there. And your eyes can see a triangle there. Oh, you can't see what I've done. So you've got these circles with these little wedges out. And when they're arranged in a grid, your eye sees a triangle here, but there is actually no triangle. It's an optical illusion. Your brain pattern matches. And it goes, oh, that looks like there should be a triangle there. There's not, there's no lines, but there's just that hint of it. And that's what's happening here. These are fun to look for and look at. I do like a bit of optical illusions. Okay, so if I made this one much bigger, how about we just go with the bare minimum and just pop some lines in. I think I will add a little bit of weight to the bottom of the lines. So that gives a completely different feel. Again, these shapes aren't quite as obvious as they are in this one or even this one. Okay, let's go with the another one and see what I can do there with this. So I'm going to pop that there, but instead of having triangles, I'm going to pop in some circles because, well, why not? And I could pop a little circle on the top, which would be quite nice. And to develop that further, I've just realised that I could have popped a circle in the corner and had other ones pointing perpendicularly instead of the points, and then let's do the circles that way. We've got molecules and atoms. That's ammonia. You can take me out of the lab, but you can't take the science out of me. Okay. Not so fussed on that one, but it was an interesting thought. But what may work better is to have that there. I'm beginning to think that's starting to look a bit like the radiation warning symbol. Is there anything else we could do? Well, I'm just going to fill a circular shape there. That's quite interesting. I quite like that. Let me have a look at this again. Because perhaps instead of having the lines extending, I can have them within the circle. Oops, I've drawn it the same way then. I should have rotated it. But no worries, because what I'll do is I'll pop those in there, because that was another variation I was going to head towards. So perhaps this has prompted me. And it looks like we've got this is interesting, because it looks like these lines go underneath, and I am going to make a feature of this as if we've got, and I will do it without those extra lines on again, because I can. And let's do these like so. And that does look like we're looking at a structure that's underneath. It's almost like looking, if you can imagine a pyramid with a three-sided base. This is like looking at the base and having cut away the corners and seeing where the edges of the pyramid go. I don't know if that makes any sense whatsoever, but it does in my head. So that was fun. So that is another possibility, is having these pointing towards the corners. I'm sure it would not work as well if we did this towards the corners or towards the sides. But it sort of does, but it doesn't fit in with a pyramid quite as well. It looks more like a strange kind of Swiss cheese, you know, Tom and Jerry cheese. So we've got some things going on here, and I think this is the variation I like particularly. I think I prefer it without the double lines, to be honest, now I'm looking at it. I like that. and it's how we use shadow will help to bring these out. The other thing is that you can make these quite large, so there's quite a lot of the base cut through. Now this is now taking me back to maths lessons, drawing angles on triangles and things. Never a good thing to remind me of maths, but let's do something arty with it. So that's quite interesting. I like that. That's a favourite. Okay, so I've called this an ode to triangle, so that's how it was described in the description for the challenge today. But I'll leave triangles alone for a moment. So let's have a look at a different shape. Let's have a look at a square. And we can use the same idea. I'm going to pop in the centre lines that point towards each edge, which basically are going to give me a cross shape. And I'm just going to do this. And I'm going to take this. And I'm sure this is another fragment or tangle pattern, to be honest. I'm sure I've seen this or something similar to this. I could pop them in the corners, but I've said I don't particularly like that. I don't know why, it just doesn't appeal. But this one does. Oh, seven triangles. These are the little 7 triangles. So, yeah, okay, I can see how it splits up. So, just worked that one out. So I've got triangles here. I just don't want to put them in the corner particularly. What I might do instead is to just round the corners of this one, because we end up with something that looks like a flower. So I'll draw it without the rounding, which is what I should have done really in the first place. Perhaps give this a bigger cross in the middle. And let me have a look. About halfway between the tips of these line, the tips of the pointy, this cross in the middle, the point and the edge of the square, put a dot in just to help me make sure I'm staying pretty much in the middle. So add black to that. I do like these graphic versions. Rather graphic shapes. So that's really quite nice. I like both versions there. Which is really quite sweet. Like, this is a triangle if you look at it. In fact, I'll try that over here, because this gives a triangle that's got a rounded bottom rather than one pointing out. We've got it going the other way. So let me do that over here. Do that here. So I will do the version where these are pointing towards the sides. Like this. And then in the corners, instead of having the triangle sticking up, we'll have it going the other way. And now we've gone from a petal shape to more of a circle there, which is really quite fun actually. That is fun. Yeah, that one's much nicer. It works. There we go. Good job, Angela. Yeah, I'm saying good job to myself because I've surprised myself there. But yet again, it took me working with a different shape to work out that was possible. So that's a good thing. Okie dokes, let's have a look at other things we could do. So I'll stick with this one for a moment with the points of this in a cross, pointing at the sides rather than the corners. Oh, and I was going to draw that circle in. And I'm going to pop these in on either side. So that would make an interesting repeating pattern. And it would be like we've got one, it's like a sheet above which has got holes cut in it to reveal what is underneath. So that would be quite fun, and it's the analogy of these. But here I just use straight lines. And this is how that one will play out here. And I will go and do version here where oh no, I can't, I've completely got that one wrong. And an accident creates something new and different. Yeah. So that's a possible thing as well, is to do it like this, perhaps. So that's an interesting one as well. That's got some mileage in it. Okay, so with these, I did have them pointing towards the sides, like that. Oh, I've done it. I've gone and been a klutz again, haven't I? Okay. So let's pop them all in, like so. Messy, but there. Right, try again, Angela. Focus. Obviously haven't had enough tea yet today. I want these along, I don't want them along the edge at all. I want them on the corners. Okay, let's try a final time. Corner, corner, corner. Central one. Like this, and then I can perhaps we can, these ones we could do that little bit of weighting on the edge like that, so they go from thick to thin to thick again. So that actually is nice as well. That's it. I prefer a greater amount of black. These are nice, but that one is my favourite. Okay, so with squares, I hope you saw those, because I didn't check I was on camera. Sorry if I missed those out. But I made a lot of oopsies here by not focusing on what I wanted to do and thinking clearly. But I've got some other variations going on there, even with 6 lines in the middle. And this one came from a complete accident where I just got everything the wrong way round. So I thought, right, I'm just going to colour it in black and see what happens, and stick some lines coming out, as if it's all black there. Yeah, you get the idea. Okay, so let's do the corner thing here, but do this from corner to corner. Bit off there, but I think in the grand scheme of things it'll work out quite nicely. There we go. So a different way, so that gives a different feel again. Part of me thinks it could be fun to do this one this way and have this central one, starting from a point and each line thickening out, and then going thick to thin from the curve to the corner. So that's a different one again. That's actually quite nice. I like that. I'll redraw it because I want a comparison here to see which I prefer. So let's pop that one in there. As you thicken the ends of these, you can actually adjust the trajectory of the line somewhat. So if they are really seriously mismatched, it won't be so obvious. But I don't think anybody had noticed too much anyway. Okay, so we've got that. And then what I thought, I'm using a finer pen here. And I'm just going to aura inside this shape, just to bring this part out a little bit. Yeah, that one feels more finished to me than this one, but I guess it's personal preference. In the same way we could do that with this one. We'd get an interesting shape here though. So if I pop that, have these going on because I can. Okay, just to do it quickly. And then I am drawing the straight lines in first, just so I can try and keep their distance, the distance between them and the outside edges, fairly consistent. But that looks quite nice, and I'm just thinking it then becomes almost like a line has been etched around that panel just to bring that feature out. So that's quite interesting. See, I've drawn it there like that, and I wanted to draw it like that. I definitely have not had enough tea. Right, let me start with the corners. There we go. I'll get there. And this one I'm going to change them in the way I did in the one next door. Well, now that's interesting. I like that. And I was going to. Okay, let me take these. I'm really going to make some big outer circles here and a smaller inner one perhaps, because of course this is the way to vary as well, is to have the different, these elements we're adding in the box, bigger or smaller, or change the size of one set and keep and do the opposite to the other. So I could have made the inside bigger and the outside bit smaller, but I didn't. Now I can see there's a very little space between these half circles on the outside edge and the inner circle. But I did it. That's what fine pens are for. So that, this is becoming my favourite. Mind you, the same can be done over there. Yeah, that works nicely. Okay, I'm starting to get a page full. Yeah, starting. I've still got plenty of space. And it's all a bit all over the place, because you never know, I may come across something in a different shape that I want to apply to a triangle or back to the squares. But I think the next shape I'm going to try, it's not a circle, but I think I might try a semicircle. And for this one, how am I going to do this? Because we want something in the centre. So I will perhaps put a triangle there and perhaps have lines like that. That's a different way of doing it. It's just I've got this here but no circle around it. So it almost looks like this is holding that in place. And what I'm thinking as well, now I've done that, is I'm going to pop a little circle in the middle. And I'm just going to pop these points around that circle. Not very well. My pen is getting to be a bit thick. Oh, and I've done this so they're not at the corners, but that's fine. Just shows you can pop it the other way. And in fact, I must probably do it completely off centre, but I do like a bit of symmetry. So that's possible, and of course the other variations are, without a shadow of a doubt. So I'll just pop one of those variations in, and I'm going to do the variation where it points to, that central shape points to the corners and to the curve, the middle of the curve. So I'm going to curve in the middle there, and I think now it's that shape, isn't it? It's that furled leaf kind of shape, and that is possible in all of them. So let's have a look at the triangle one. We're not having a triangle here, are we? Yes, we are. It's a strange shaped triangle, but it's still a triangle. So pointing towards the centre of the sides and down. So you can really play with that pointiness like that. So that is different. Let me just try that with a more equilateral triangle shape. Pop that there. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop these in first, because it'll give me a better idea of the area I've got for this one, and so I can pop that in better. They're still triangles, but they're very broad triangles with the curvy edges. So, and that overlaps with an earlier pattern, a couple of earlier fragments that have been done this month. So that was an accident here, if you like, but then it can apply to the others. And if I do that with a square, and I'm going to choose to do it with a square, so the points are at the centre of the and I'm just going to extend these lines somewhat so I can get a really good starry shape there. And I've just realised something I haven't done is something we learned from yesterday's blueberry. I say learned, but something that I can make use of is the idea of perhaps putting an aura around that central triangle, and then perhaps doing little baby ones here that we could also aura around. It's akin to these, isn't it? But it's a different approach and a different middle. It's sort of similar, but it's not. So it's like, yeah, it's like these, but with auras everywhere. So that's a different thing. It's a possibility. And of course it could be done with these for sure. Okay, other shapes. Let's try a leaf shape. I think the central cross is the way to go, perhaps with this one. And I'm going to do this in the first instance because I think that would work nicely, like so. So it's very much like a shield now. Got a shield boss in the centre and those leaf-shaped shields. Let's have a look if I, instead of taking that cross to the centre, oh no, to the point and the centres, what about if we do it like this? So I'll have one here, one here, one here and one here. I think I'm going to enjoy having this kind of thing going on rather than the little ticks. I think I really have settled on this as my kind of favourite variation here. So I need to shake that up a little bit, I think. But that would work as well. So it gives a different internal shape here. And once auraed around, as I'm guessing, I know, you can fill that in with a pattern if you wish. But it's a nice, interesting way of working with things. Okie dokes. Let's have a look at a pentagon. There is roughly the centre. So I want lines pointing towards the corners. And I'm going to just put lines coming out of the corners as if they're going to join up. That's interesting already, just like that. I think these broader angles on the corners here, they feel better with these kinds of triangles that point from the corner back inwards. That feels nicer, it feels better. Okay, and I'm sure that if we made a nice big pentagon, or bigger one, that we can do this, because I know I can. So let's pop a central point. This is like a little star in the middle. So and just do it this way. Just thicken those there. So that would make an interesting fragment. Okie cokes. I did have, what was the other? Oh, circles. How many of these lines do we want to put in a circle? Well, the answer is as many as you like, but I'm going to stick with 4 for a moment. And I am going to draw my lines on like so. I think this one could actually be quite a bit longer, and we could have a superly big one there. So by drawing that off centre, I get a very off-centered kind of fragment shape. That is quite fun. I think it's quite fun. I'm going to draw a circle around that one now. Which you could argue I should have done first, but I didn't. Sun's definitely coming out here, which is lovely. So there we are. So that is an odd one. I'm sure it could work, but I think it would work in a strange way. I'll just do the same thing, but with this in the centre. So, but with a circle, you could have as many of these as you like. So let me just move this over a bit. So let me put 6 in here. So I'll want one there, one there, one there, one there, one there, and one there. And then I'll just draw little circles or semicircles so they cover the top of these. There we go. So another way of doing that, so that would be quite fun. I like that. Teardrops, because teardrops are one of my favourite kinds of shapes. With just a little adaptation, you get a heart there, so perhaps I'll have a look at that. But again, I think this one, triangular one, would work quite nicely, I think. And I am going to see, I really have settled on this. I'm not really breaking away from this idea at all. Which is surprising to me. Some patterns seem to lend themselves to more strange variations perhaps than others do. I don't know. Try this and perhaps have a very big circle here. So just a single line going through. That's an interesting one in its way. Definitely looks like there is something behind here, doesn't there? So that's quite interesting. Yeah. Okay. A wibbly wobbly shape. Well, with this one, if I'm going to carry on with this idea, I am going to have a wibbly wonky shape in here. And let's have a look. It's a wibbly wonky version of. That's interesting. I almost want to put one down here somewhere as well, which I think I might. I think I might take advantage of this here, this shape here, and have that. So that's an interesting thing. Lots of these put together. How would I put these together? With great difficulty, I think, is the answer. But I think you could. That one would meet up there somewhere. and so on. I think you'd have to put all these shapes in first and then decide how you pop them together. Like that. So that could be quite an interesting way of doing things. If we have one in here, then that one is going to go up that way. So that would be quite interesting. That'd be quite fun. You get a very random kind of effect there. So what do you think? Just close my curtain a moment. So blocks out some of the lovely sunlight for a moment. I think that those are turning out to be quite interesting. Now I am hunting for a pastel pencil. I want one that's a darkish colour, but not black. Got brown. I don't want brown really. There's my bluey grey one. I found it again. And then I need a tortillon. So it's been so far it's been an interesting trip this morning, hasn't it? The rattle is from the plastic bag and keeping these things in. This is one I definitely want to try some shadowing on. The more space I've got, the nicer it is that it works, I think. So I'm going to put some shadow underneath these edges and just pull this out. This colour may be a bit strange because it's not a clean paper stump. So that works, doesn't it? That lifts that up. I definitely like these variations. So what I'm trying to do is think about where there might be shadow. I think in the central one we can put shadow completely around, perhaps, leaving a bit in the middle, on the edges underneath. Just that hint of lightness around the edge. And that really does help to bring those to some kind of three-dimensionality. And it's going to be the same for all of them, really, because I've done so many that are so similar here. I've really got trapped in this idea. That's unusual for me. I think it's because it's such an unusual, it's such a different kind of fragment for me to have drawn. This is not my usual kind of style. I do love these. If you're familiar with the tangle patterns of Thomas Padros, his geometric patterns are absolutely fantastic. But my brain just doesn't work in that kind of way. So I thought. Perhaps it's just familiarity and experimentation and working things out. These really are. I'm really quite happy with these. I don't know what you think. Not a huge amount of variation here, but perhaps enough that it makes them just that bit interesting. I think the original construct is so geometrical and measured in its way that whatever is going to be created, I think, is going to end up being the same. I'll try adding shadow to this central shape from the outside in, perhaps. There's a different variation, perhaps, to give that sense of volume there. Now this is going to be tricky. But let's see how this works under here. So that does lift that up, doesn't it? Yeah, that works. Okay, what about some of these others that are slightly different? I think let's try popping some shadow around the outer parts of these and see how that brings these to life or not. So sometimes with flowers you get darker edge to the edge of the petals and a lighter colour to the inside, but here I'm going to do it the opposite. So I'm going to put the shadow around the centre and just allow it to spread out down the middle of those petals a bit. So that's interesting, that kind of works as well. Yeah. These, I'm just so tempted to treat them like balls, to bring out that illusion, even though there is nothing to say they are. There's no joined lines other than the outer edges. So that really does look interestingly weird. Okay, taking this and changing these shapes. How would I want to do that? I think I might add some shadow around these just to see what happens, because I'm not entirely sure where I'm going with this. It's got the feeling that I want it to feel like this middle bit here is sunk in a bit, perhaps. Actually, it's actually made me think that everything is sunk backwards except for these circles which are sticking up. So that's another alternative which I haven't got here, have I? No, I haven't particularly. So I'll do it with a triangle. I'll pop that triangle over here, and instead of having the triangles coloured in black, let's have a look at creating shadow right in the middle of this and pulling it out into the corners, but keeping it darkest in the middle, I think. Although logically I know it should be darkest around the edges if we've got something sunken. There we go. So there's that one. All right. So that's fun. And I've got space for a square version of that, because in the middle you'd have a so I've gone with a square in the middle, and I'm going to pop, instead of a circle, and I'm going to pop the lines in like this. So that's another version, isn't it? Instead of circling this, is giving it its own, the corresponding shape, or you know, an echo of the shape. So if I do a leaf shape, and I put a smaller leaf shape in the middle, then I have choices about how I approach this. Like that. So that's interesting. Different way of doing it. So I chose to put a line in the middle and have the ends spreading out. The size of the shape in the middle is the same. The same idea would apply with these, with any shape really. It's just getting that idea, that concept down. So if I try that with a semicircle, so there are ways I can have this going to these different sides. So instead of, you know, sort of like thickening that line, is making use of that kind of shape. So that's interesting. And with things like triangles, and now I've got to find space for triangles again. Okay, we can slot one in here, and we could copy the shape of the triangle this way. And I'm going to stick to putting circles in the corners. Or if we do a triangle like this, we could do it the opposite way, which means we'd have circles here. Oh look, that's interesting. Now, let me go and get some paper. This is becoming a long video again, and I'm going to make absolutely no apologies whatsoever for that. So if I take that triangle, I'll draw it a bit bigger so we can see what we've done. Or I can see what I've done. That was the royal we there, which was not a good, it's never a good look on a commoner. So instead of leaving a gap between these, I'm actually drawing them as they would be. Let's try that this way. So I'm getting these shapes here. I'm going to aura them. So I'm getting to some more variants here, right at the end of today's play. So that's interesting. Let me have a look at this. Because if I do this again, I think I did something similar to that over here. But just pop that triangle in instead, and perhaps not fill the triangle in the middle. Is so again, it's so if I do this, that is just another fragment. I don't know whether we've used that one in this challenge. I don't think so. But I think if I do this, I know that's another fragment, but I'm looking at how I can make this consistent, oh gosh, with what I've been doing perhaps. So yeah, so there we are. It's a variation where I've taken these lines and I've drawn a circle in the centre, a triangle in the centre, and instead of, so we're getting more complicated here. I thought that might lead to something. Right, let me try one more time. I want it this way round. So I've got these shapes here, and then I want to bring a triangle there. Yeah, that's the way I wanted it. Okay, so try with a square. I want the corners to point towards the sides, and then in this case there will be triangles because we'll be looking at half squares, and half a square is a right-sided triangle. So that's yeah, get those triangles back in. And yeah, that is different variations. So yeah, so those will be fun as well. I'm sure these must be fragments of tangle patterns somewhere. I'm sure somebody's done them. And of course this idea would work with any shape, as long as you bear in mind that you need the points. Okay, going to the center of the lines, and then we can just draw the triangles in. That takes a lot of thinking about, but I got there. It's starting with going from the middle of one side to the other with a gap between. You don't join them two there, and then that would, oops, work. Quite pleasantly, I think. So that's another kind of idea. And of course, well, a circle is a circle, so that won't work quite so well. Let's have a look at a leaf shape. So I'm going to pop the leaf shape sideways on, and we can have those triangles there, as well as the leaf shape in the middle. That's quite an interesting shape, a band. But with the leaf shape, I think that way would work just as well, I think, with that. Yeah, so that could be an interesting kind of concept, I suppose. This one, I think you could just pop any kind of shape in the middle and it would work. Just pick where you want the triangles to join. So using the little dips in that inner shape for the points actually works quite nicely. So that's another possibility. So there we are. Loads of possibilities of this tangle. Who'd have thought it, eh? Who would have thought it? I certainly haven't, and that light has crept round. The sun does move at a pace. Winter sunlight low in the sky, so comes straight in through my windows, which are my window to the side of me, to my left side, is south facing, and I love being up here. I love being, because I'm upstairs, I love being up so I can see out over the rooftops of the streets below me. I love the sunshine coming in, summer or winter. Well, not so much summer because it gets incredibly hot, but in the winter, and to have that natural light. And but it does have a problem when it comes to filming. So here we are. We have a whole heap of variations here, and I just, well, what can I say? It's been fun. It's been just over an hour again. But hopefully you've enjoyed this and we'll get some inspiration from it. And just when I thought there was nothing else I could do, suddenly a little drawing, a little accident, a little slip up, and it took me down another path. And that is exactly what I mean when I say, even when things seem to go wrong, sometimes, or not sometimes, nearly always, if not always, there is something you can take from it and work with it, especially when it comes to variations. You know, I wouldn't have got this kind of thing going on if I hadn't made an oopsie in the, in the centre of that one. If I hadn't thickened these here and tried it on a triangle, I wouldn't have got this way of having 3 balls in there, which aren't actually 3 balls. It's an illusion, an optical illusion, a fun one, and all of these other things. So it's just that, again, I'll use that word of perseverance, or not giving up and saying, oh, I'm useless at this, I can't do this. It's not that. It's, you may have come across something unique to you and something you like. I discovered something in this quite quickly I really loved, and I stuck with that instead of thinking, well, what else could I do? But the sort of like slips of my pen pushed me to doing other things, which is an interesting kind of thought to me in some ways. So I'm going to leave it here today, just over an hour and 4 minutes, an hour and 5. And I'll say thank you for joining me. If you've enjoyed, thumbs up please, consider subscribing, and I look forward to seeing you here again, both my old subscribers and my new, my old friends and my new. And thank you. Take care for now. Bye-bye. Hoyle.